Um, so moving on to our next kind of and final category of things is really looking for comprehensive change, communications, and training strategy that can address any or all of these particular needs. So we're going to go through these rather quickly just to kind of give you a high-level overview because we want to make sure we practice or end on time and have some time to field additional questions. But we would just look at, you know, a plan has to be holistic. It needs to be more than, you know, so many people say, oh, well, you know, training will fix that. And training is good in and of itself, but it is only part of a solution. We'll show you some statistics shortly around that. But we need to come up with a strategy and a plan that address communication, training, ways to simulate, prototype, proof of concept, and ways we can do performance support and after the fact, and come up with a holistic strategy that deals with all those types of information. We want to make sure that as part of that communication strategy that we have a plan for all stakeholders so that they understand the initiative, how it's going to affect them, and how they can contribute to its success. We want to make sure that we talk in really frank and honest terms. Don't sugarcoat anything. You know, we've had to sell in changes in organizations that absolutely many of the groups were just taking one for their team. They had very customized and specific systems that worked a very unique and specific way. But upon a globalization, we needed to get everybody on the same kind of technology front that a lot of them really just had not a lot of what's in it for me's. And again, ultimately, we just dealt that head on and said, you know, in this case, this is a situation where you are going to kind of take one for the team, and the honesty of that versus us trying to kind of cover it up or just sugarcoat it too much was really effective in really making sure that they started to kind of understand the rationale and got on board, albeit still somewhat reluctantly. We want to make sure that we involve people throughout the organization and the masses. So when you talk about a communication strategy and plan, you know, we strongly recommend you come up with a matrix similar to what you see here that addresses all these different things, like what is the time frame for your communications, what are all the different audiences, what are the key message points, what's the intent, or what are we trying to accomplish by that communication, what medium or channel we're going to utilize to send it out, whether it's emails, voicemails, town halls, you know, all those types of things. Who's going to be responsible for creating it? How's it going to be sent? What are we going to do for a feedback mechanism? You know, you need to, if you can kind of come up with a plan that thinks through this all in advance, then you really kind of like a player piano. You kind of deliver to it versus trying to think as you go. How you might want to go about it, and you'll find that you can, if you try to proactively put together a structured format of these communications, I think you'll find that you will head off so many more problems by making sure that you didn't miss key groups, you didn't miss key communication milestones and things like that.
You know, so, Dave, a point that I might interject here, when we look at communications, I mean, something that we typically like to look at is really focusing on the intention. I mean, what do we want people to think, do, and feel differently as a result of a communication, and using that as a filter, you know, to evaluate the types of communications that will be developed.
Absolutely, yeah. Again, spending the time, and typically it takes a bit to put these things together. You know, we've run multi-day communication sessions with large groups to try to make sure that we get this, you know, laid out properly around some large initiatives. So again, this isn't something you're going to sit around in a half an hour with a group and come up with a plan that's really going to, you know, knock it out of the park. You might do that if you're lucky, but typically not. So it comes down to the right mix. So actually, you know, some things, some sets that are relevant are, you know, typically, you know, a training budget occupies somewhere between 10 and 15% of the overall budget of a project. And again, these are just averages across, you know, the workplace at large, and that gets you an increased chance of success. In other words, maintaining that type of a budget increases your chance of success by about 80%. Based on a number of studies, again, that can reflect this type of thing. But training is only kind of part of it. Training only accounts for about 24% of the overall impact to what you know, the affected users will kind of realize as a part of your initiative preparation. So 26% is related to the things you do and say or send out or communicate prior to the training, and then a full 50% of it happens post-initiative. And a majority of this is, you know, informal, hey, what are you doing over there? How'd you get that done? You know, on-the-job kind of types of things. So again, our ability to understand some of these statistics and to spend our resources and time to just say, hey, training's going to fix it. Training is clearly not going to fix anything. It's going to help. But if you don't spend some time to make sure you address what happens prior and post in this kind of holistic way, you're not going to be able to deliver to the degree you could. So some things obviously we can do is early on we can provide high-level orientation training just to kind of, even though the system may not be done, we can put together some pieces that are kind of, it's an overview piece that can be done early on to get that early buy-in, again, to continue to sell in the story, to build awareness, to show what the to-be states, intended to be before we actually would do some application training. There's ways you can do simulations, and again, we do in some enormously low-tech stuff. We do role-play stuff in a room. We do role-plays in call center, fake call centers, where we just, you can come up with scripts to get people to understand how their new behavior will be, or what their new response should be in various circumstances. You can also come up with, obviously, really crazy simulations that are full-on recreations of maybe a new application or interfaces or things like that. Again, a lot of different ways you can kind of deal with this, but this is all stuff that could be done pre and post in that case. You have the exact, the actual training itself, where again, now this is more detailed about, what the true nuts and bolts. And again, you want to typically do this as close to the actual, go live date as possible, because a lot of this stuff, especially if you do some real detailed training pieces, if you do it too far out, people just forget it, and the retention will be really, really low. So typically we've seen some of the best results when you work your training within the last 2-week window of an actual go live date, or within a pilot, or whatever things you're kind of doing in that regard. Thinking through the whole performance support issues, how you're going to set up a help desk, FAQ sites, job aids, in the workplace aids, hanging charts, hanging posters. I mean, there's some really low-tech, very effective things that can be done to get people thinking about the right things at the right time post-go live. And again, these are things that you can get a lot of bang for the buck out of. Any types of job aids, super helpful. In this case, this is a laminated 3-foot by 4-foot card that in a manufacturing workspace that really kind of laid out how a new system of control system was going to be implemented and utilized throughout the manufacturing process. And lots of neat things that you can do, low cost but big impact. And really, it's all about kind of continuing to stay after things to the degree you can kind of keep your core project team following up with any post-implementation support items, the better off you will be. So again, we've really run things down to the end.